It's time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the coach Perry, and Pat, the shot caller Flaherty. Here we go.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Comeback Sports. Once again, we're back here on a Wednesday night giving you 10 sports topics of what's going on across the globe, across the country, in sports, across the whole gamut of sports that's happening, both in college, high school, pros. So I am Pat, the shot caller Flaherty. As always, I am joined by my partner, Brendan, the coach Perry. Brendan, what's happening, my friend?
Shot caller, like I said, that's one of the best names ever. How's it going? I hope your week's going good. But I will say this. We found out that Conor McGregor can throw a right hook better than he can throw a baseball, huh?
Yeah, I don't think that was a shocker. Just by the way he was warming up, by his windup, I was like, this is not going to be pretty. So Conor, yeah, just stay away from the baseball time, please.
Yeah, that was bad.
And folks, as always, we got 10 sports topics too. If you want to call in, you can certainly call into our number. You can leave a voicemail if you'd like. That's the call-in number right there at the top of your screen. You also can follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle's right at the bottom of the screen, so follow us there. And finally, you need to subscribe to us on YouTube. Comeback Sports. You subscribe to the Comeback Sports page on YouTube. That'll really help us out. It'll also help you out because it feeds all of our content right to your YouTube channel. So you can just click right on subscription and you get all the content from this show right there. So that makes it easier on everybody. We're going to kick things off with topic number one. It's from the NFL. We're now through 2 weeks of the 2021 NFL season, Brandon, and one of the craziest games in week one was saved sort of for last at the end of Sunday, where the Chiefs and Ravens went at it. A lot of people thought this was going to be a good game, but the Ravens, came in with a lot of injuries, got a lot of guys out for the season. So the Chiefs were the heavy favorite, but Ravens with a big comeback win and a big fourth down call. Brandon, what did you think of it?
Well, I loved it. I loved watching this game, and I loved seeing these two teams play against each other, obviously with two of the young, best quarterbacks in the NFL with Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. So I think this was just must-watch TV for any football fan around the world, to be honest, watching these two teams go at it. And it was something that didn't disappoint, to be honest. I think the Chiefs really came out fast and came out swinging, and I think that guy on the left, Lamar Jackson, came out a little cold, but he quickly found his form and just absolutely started carving up that Chiefs defense, especially on the ground, rushing for over 100 yards and also throwing for over 100 yards. Had 2 rushing touchdowns, had a passing touchdown. So he had himself just an amazing night, overall. And it just proves that, Lamar Jackson can be in the conversation for MVP yet again. In the NFL. And I think, the Chiefs, came out and looked like the Chiefs of old, still a great team, had a chance to win there. Their defense looked really good. I just think it's one of those things where, like I said, I think Lamar Jackson is so hard to contain that even one of the best defenses in the NFL, he makes them kind of look silly at times. And that's what Lamar was doing. So I don't even think the Chiefs played bad at all. I think they played really good across the board, offense and defense. I just really think when it came down to it, the Chiefs made that gutsy call of going for it on fourth down, fourth and short, to not put the ball back in Patrick Mahomes' hands and not even give the Chiefs a chance to win the game. I think that was obviously the call of the week, the play of the week. And so much credit to John Harbaugh for basically making that call and for basically having the belief in his players and specifically in Lamar Jackson to be able to go out and execute the play and get the first down and win the game. And I even tweeted out, like I said, hey, give me a follow on Twitter. But I even tweeted out being like, I love seeing coaches believing in their players, especially in a big moment. And, you can see him just go, hey, Lamar, you want to go for it? All right, let's go. Like no second guessing, just, and that even shows the player like he believes in us. No second guessing. We're ready to go. They run right to the line. And I think even the Chiefs, were caught a little off guard where they were like, are they going to try to, get us to jump off sides with maybe a hard snap? But nope, boom. They went on first sound immediately and they executed a good fourth down play. And that proved to be the play that won the game, to be honest. In the end, it just secured the win. So I loved it. I loved watching these two teams play for sure. And I'm sure we'll see them play again later in the future, maybe even in the playoffs.
Yeah, I would be shocked if these two teams played later in the postseason. Two of the better young quarterbacks in the NFL with two completely different styles, but both effective. Harbaugh has always been an aggressive coach. Whether or not I like him, because I'm not really a big fan, he's an excellent coach. Guy's an excellent coach. That's why he's been there for so long. He's got a Super Bowl ring. He's always in the playoffs and made the right call. I think he was going to go for it on fourth down anyway, whether Lamar said yay or nay. But I think just having your quarterback say yes kind of reassures you. I mean, the quarterback's going to want to go for it. I think that's kind of always how it is. But I think Harbaugh, was going to go for it on fourth down anyway. Teams need to do that against the Chiefs. I remember when the Patriots were that high-flying offense with Brady and Gronk and Edelman and even back when they had Randy Moss and Wes Welker, and it was like teams didn't go for it on fourth down enough against this high-flying offense. Sometimes you need to go for it on fourth down to keep the ball out of their hands. So the Ravens did the right thing. They took the ball out of the Chiefs' hands, and that's why they won the game. Big comeback win for them. You do wonder with the Chiefs, I mean, they're such a good offense, but are they going to be able to salt away wins? Do they have that kind of pounding running game to kind of kill the clock, to have that fourth quarter where they're up by a couple of scores and they can just kind of, control the clock, control the tempo, and just salt away the victory? And I don't know if they have that. They might develop that over the season. They've revamped their offensive line, so that's probably going to take some time too. They brought in Joe Tooney. They brought in, I can't remember the tackle's name from the Ravens actually that they brought in. But they brought in some new guys. The offensive line, I think, is a little bit better this year, but it takes time for an offensive line to gel. So maybe that's part of it too. But they need to be able to kind of grab and pound late in games if they have a big lead in order to kind of secure wins, or teams like the Ravens are going to be able to try to come back. Now, there's going to be times where the Chiefs are going to outscore everybody, and it's just not going to matter. But against the better teams like the Ravens, even a team like the Titans, who has the ability to come back, they have been very inconsistent to start the year, but they have the weapons to come back in a quick manner. They got to be able to, the Chiefs got to be able to find a way to salt away wins. So we'll see if that's something they do. But yeah, the Ravens, just showing that kind of grit and toughness they've showed since Harbaugh's gotten there. They don't panic. They play hard. They play tough. They have a devastating running game, no matter who's in the backfield. We thought that it was going to be tough without their top two runners, but as you can see, they can still ground and pound and run the football, whether it's Lamar Jackson or, whoever they want to bring in there, Devontae Freeman, anybody else who they want to bring in as a street free agent. So they're going to be tough down the stretch. The Marcus Peters injury, I think, is the toughest one for them to sustain right now. But they're going to be a tough team in the AFC. This was just a gutsy and I think important win for the Ravens, because if they lose this game, they're 0-2, and their schedule doesn't get a ton easier, the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, you're right. It was, I think, a must win for them, and it's crazy to say that early in the season, but I think it was. And so they got it done. And to your point, I think the Marcus Peters injury is a lot bigger and more devastating, a lot harder to replace him right now, where it looks like they've just kind of bounced back and replaced their running backs quickly, with Latavius Murray coming in and just hitting the ground running per se. Obviously, for a running back, I think he's been doing amazing just immediately, and he's a good complement to Lamar Jackson, obviously the star of their team. But I will say this about the Chiefs, and to the point that you brought up as well, I think in all sports, but especially in professional sports, these moments are something that you have to take in as an experience for something that happens later on. So to your point, I think the Chiefs will take this experience and say, hey, we can't let that happen again. We have to be able to salt the game away and not let a team like Lamar or the Ravens and Lamar Jackson basically get back in the game like that and take control over. So it's a game of momentum, and it really swung back and forth in that game. But in the end, the Ravens were really the ones that had the most momentum and basically got the clutch win. So, and I got to say, I like Harbaugh. So, so there's that on that. But hey, let's move on to topic number 2, because you obviously brought up Brady and his high-flying offense back in the day with the New England Patriots. Well, it's arguable at this point that the offense they have down in Tampa Bay is arguably better than any offense that I think he's had in New England over his career. But he's starting off amazingly hot right now, and he did it again on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think that this team will get even better this season after winning the Super Bowl last year. Even though the Super Bowl win last year was sort of unexpected, it's just tough to do it 2 years in a row. But right now, this team's locked and loaded. And Brady looks as good as he has in, 6 or 7 years, to be honest with you. And his arm strength hasn't disappeared. He's more in tune with his receivers. I mean, we talked about, or you just mentioned how, the Pats high-flying offense with Randy Moss, Wes Welker, Dante Stallworth, Ben Watson was the tight end. They had Lawrence Maroney when Lawrence Maroney was productive. And they had a pretty high potent offense. This offense is deeper. I don't know if the top end talent is as good, but it's deeper. I mean, you think about receivers, You got Mike Evans, Godwin, Antonio Brown, who just hit the COVID list, but he'll be back because I think everybody on that team's vaccinated, so it shouldn't take him long before he gets back. He might just miss one game. And then I'm losing. I can't remember who that slot receiver is that everybody.
Scotty Miller.
Scotty Miller, and then of course you have Gronk, you have OJ Howard.
Yep.
Now you have Leonard Fournette catch the ball. I mean, you have guy after guy after guy after guy for the Bucs that can catch the football and make plays, and it's like pick your poison when you're an opposing defense. So not only do they have a quarterback who just knows how to distribute the ball to whoever's open, you have, one guy goes down and there's plenty of other guys that have experience to step up. So this team is poised to make another run at the Super Bowl, and Brady's been unreal to start the season. I mean, he's not going to look like Justin Herbert throwing the ball. He's not going to look like even sometimes Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, but Brady still can fire that thing. So, Max Kellerman's been wrong, for 8 years now about Brady falling off a cliff. When it does happen, it's going to happen fast. We saw it with Peyton Manning. In 2013, he lit the world on fire and then lost in the Super Bowl. In 2014, you saw a decline sort of towards the end of the year. And then 15 is when he just couldn't, he was throwing, you had noodle arm, that year. That's when it was sort of done, even though they won the Super Bowl that year. So whenever that happens to Brady, it's going to happen fast. But we don't see any indication of that happening anytime soon. So I don't know. This guy's might play till he's 50. I don't think it sounded crazy a couple of years ago. I don't think it's out of the question, Brandon.
I will ask you this. Did you hear Tom Brady's dad on sports radio this week? So
yeah, he was on the Current podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he came out and was very vocal, and they said, does this kind of, prove you right or prove your son right that he could still play? And he said, damn right it does. And so it was one of those things. And then he went on to say that Bill Belichick wanted Tom Brady off the team and out of the organization and wanted to go into a rebuild mode. And Tom wanted to stay and redo his contract, and they would not do it. So I think that brought out a lot of truth in the matter that we've all been looking for to see really what that history was. And honestly, I think it brings out a lot to show why Brady is so fired up these last 2 years. When somebody tells you can't do something and you want to prove them wrong, I trust me, I get on it, and I will do anything to prove somebody wrong. I think Tom Brady is just as competitive, and he has been doing that these last few years and has been tearing it up. I mean, obviously, the Super Bowl win last year, like you said, was unexpected, but they went on a heck of a run at the end of the year, led by Tom Brady and led by that defense to get the job done, and they were the Super Bowl champions. And then right now, they're the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl again, which we all know is hard to do going back-to-back in the NFL. The last team to do it, the New England Patriots, led by Tom Brady. So it's just really one of those things where I got to keep bringing it up that Bill Belichick was wrong, and Tom Brady still had a lot left in the tank. We needed to put weapons around him. We just did not do that at all. So the last few years that we got out of Tom Brady were just kind of mediocre per se because we didn't give him enough opportunity. We didn't give him enough weapons to actually showcase his talent. Here in Tampa Bay, like you said, with all those weapons, don't even have to name them all again. There's so many. We would waste our time here. There's just so many. He's got so many options to throw to, and they've got great running backs in the backfield. So it's just a whole new team. When you put talent around this guy, he proves that he's still one of the best players in the NFL. And I've got to say, I think he has the best mind in the NFL. and has the best football savvy of any NFL quarterback right now, where he can read a defense pre-snap in a matter of seconds, and then even post-snap, he can read it in a matter of seconds. Julian Edelman was on Inside the NFL this week talking about how Tom Brady doesn't want his receivers kind of dancing at the line. He wants them to get into their routes quick so he can read the defense quick and be able to basically make a decision a lot faster. We all know he is great at doing that, has one of the fastest releases in the NFL, even still at the age of 44. So I do still think he has a lot left in the tank. But just quickly, him and Gronk have a little podcast that they do themselves in Tampa Bay. And the question came up on their podcast saying, hey, Tom, do you think you can play to 50 years old? And he said, you know what? I think I might be able to do that. I think I can easily do that. I've been feeling pretty good. And he made the joke of being like, Florida's a retirement state, so I could just play till I'm 50 and then just mosey on into retirement. And I honestly think that is a real possibility with this guy right now, the way he's playing.
Yeah. I think the biggest question is, will his wife Giselle let him play till he's 50? Because I think that's the biggest concern in the Brady household right now. But he's just been unreal. Next week's going to be nuts, just so everybody knows. Tampa Bay is playing the Patriots. And speaking of the Patriots, we're going to move on to topic number 3. And right now we have Pat's pretty mediocre. They played the New York Jets last week this past week, in week 2. The Jets are one of the worst teams in the NFL. They got a brand new rookie quarterback. So do the Patriots. But it was kind of a sloppy game. They didn't absolutely dominate the Jets. I think they were in control the whole time, Brandon. What are your thoughts on the Pats' week 2 win against the New York Jets?
Well, I had been warning people. I said, hey, you got 2 rookie quarterbacks going against each other. It's probably not going to be a pretty game, and it really wasn't on both sides. I mean, obviously, I think Mac Jones played a heck of a lot better than the rookie quarterback for the Jets did, Zach Wilson. And obviously, I think Zach Wilson had basically 3 unforced errors that we call them, where he basically just gave the ball away. I don't even think the Patriots had to make a play at that point on 3 of those interceptions. The one play where the defense actually made a play was the first interception, when J.C. Jackson got his hand on the ball, basically made it a tip drill to himself, and then secured the interception. The other 3 interceptions by Wilson were just some of the worst decisions I've seen a young quarterback make over the last year or so, to be honest, in any type of football. So it's just really one of those things when you got 2 rookie quarterbacks going up against each other, you got to give the nod to Mac Jones here, who didn't make many mistakes, and many at all, to be honest. And I got to say this too, he improved from last week. So even though I know the offense, I still been saying, looks very pedestrian and basically looks still like the same offense that was led by Cam Newton last year, I still think Mac Jones improved over week 1 to week 2, made less mistakes. And specifically, I'm going to bring up that play that he made where he just tossed the ball behind him in week 1 and just made such a bad decision. In week 2, he made the decision of, I'm going to take a sack here and I'm going to take the ball with me, and we're just going to move on to the next down, and was playing smart game management football. And I think right now, in the point of his career as a rookie right now, obviously with only a couple of starts underneath his belt, I think game management mode is appropriate. Let's trust the run game. Let's follow that run game. Let's dish the ball out to our running backs out of the backfield, like James White as well, with some short passes. And I think they're even doing that, a lot of short passes with the wide receivers as well, trying to get Mac Jones comfortable and into a rhythm going into these next few games. But I will say, like I said, the offense looks very pedestrian, much like last year. But I do think Mac Jones improved from week 1 to week 2, and I was happy to see that.
Yeah, I think it was an ugly win, no question. They let the Jets kind of beat themselves with the 4 interceptions from Zach Wilson. And I would say those weren't total fault. Some of the Patriots beat writers, even like a Greg Bedard, Curran, or other guys, said that there was also, in addition to the 1 year, there's another one where Corey Davis actually didn't finish running his route, and that's why the throw was off, and that's why the Pats picked it off. There was 2 that were really bad, that they were totally Zach Wilson's fault. But I think what the Patriots did here is, they sort of, didn't chuck the ball downfield after they intercepted the rookie quarterback on the other side 2 times. You used to see this with Jameis Winston when he was back with Tampa Bay, where the Tampa Bay defense would get a turnover. They would get a takeaway, and then Jameis Winston would try to make a big play, and he would give it right back. The Pats didn't want to do that against the Jets. They said the Jets are going to turn the ball over. We're going to force those turnovers, and then we're going to play ball control. We're going to play safely. We're not going to turn it over ourselves, and that's how we're going to win. It wasn't pretty. A lot of Pats fans are saying throw the ball downfield. What's up with all these screen passes, these short passes? And Mac Jones actually did miss a couple throws. There was one in particular where Hunter Henry was actually open in the end zone. I think it was in the third quarter maybe. But the biggest thing with the Patriots that's disappointing to me right now is the offensive line. That was supposed to be a huge strength of this team. I know Trent Brown was out this past week, starting right tackle. That right tackle spot right now is in shambles. Justin Herron and then Durant, who they just picked up a couple weeks ago, they both did not play well against the Jets. This offensive line was supposed to be their bread and butter, and it's been one of the weakest parts of their team so far. Some of that is timing. Some of that is, guys getting reps together. Some of that is it's a new quarterback. It's knowing where he's going to be when he drops back. And then some of the passing, it's just a bunch of new guys. You've got Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry. You've got Jonnu Smith, 4 brand new players who are featured players in the offense, and they just have to get on the same page with timing with the quarterback and with the offensive line. So they are a work in progress. It's not going to be pretty for at least another few weeks. But to me, the offensive line is the biggest appointment for them right now. They dominating up front, push and get, James and Ramondre Stevenson, if he ever gets carries again after fumbling in week 1. J.J. Taylor, those guys need holes. And the offensive line is supposed to be the strength of this team. They're the ones that have been the biggest disappointment. So that's what's got to improve with the Patriots, because I think then there's a chain reaction where the line plays better, they give Jones more time. When he has more time, then he can go downfield. But you can't throw it downfield if you don't have protection. And that's what the Patriots dealt with against the Jets on Sunday.
Yeah, you have got to protect your quarterback at all times in the NFL. And not only a rookie quarterback, or even a veteran quarterback, you've got to protect them at all times. But we could even say with a rookie quarterback, you want to protect them even more. You don't want them taking hits, obviously, and rattling their confidence, but you want to give them more time to be able to read the defense. So the more time they can give Mac Jones back there, I think it will definitely help the offense. But I've got to quickly say this for the Patriots fans that are kind of complaining about these short dink and dunk passes, like, where have you been? This has been the Patriots of old. Honestly, that's exactly what Tom Brady would do. Would carve you up with short routes with Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski down the slot or down the pipe, right? Occasionally looking for a deep ball, and that's what the Patriots are doing right now. So I still think they're kind of playing still the Josh McDaniels offense. He might be tailoring it slightly for Mac Jones, where we're not throwing it all at him right now. But I still think this looks very similar to the Patriots offenses of the past. We just need our weapons to kind of pick up a little bit more and do a little bit more things, and we need to score some more points, and we need to be a little bit more consistent. And I think that's where it's lacking, the consistency. One drive, they're actually looking really good, where you're like, all right, they're moving the ball, and then the next drive, it's just 3 and out automatically, and then we're not looking good at all. So it's just really one of those things where I think consistency is big, and I think it'll help Mac Jones too. But I think you're right. I think if the offensive line can pick it up here, they are the key to everything. And I've always said this, even as a football coach, they're the people that don't get enough credit. The offensive and defensive lines on football, if you cannot control the line of scrimmage, you don't have 0 chance of winning the game. So I think that's really one of those things where if the Patriots line can step it up and give Mac Jones a little bit more time and even give those running backs a couple more options of holes to run through, that'll give the running game a great chance. And obviously we know the passing game can feed off of that as well. So I still think, obviously, it's early here, but I do want to see over these next few weeks, I want to see the offense pick up a little bit. I want to see some more points on the board. But I will say, once again, I think from week 1 to week 2, Mac Jones looked good and did improve. And I think with a rookie quarterback, that's all you can ask for. So let's move on tonight to a great play I saw in college football that I wanted to highlight. And I'm calling this Memphis Madness. And this is a punt return touchdown by the punt returner of University of Memphis football, where he just caught the other team sleeping. So I just quickly want to go over some rules here to show you when producer Ben finds the clip, if he finds it. when you punt the ball, okay, it's got to be possessed by the downing team, okay? You can't just touch it. This downing team, okay, just touched the ball and then walked away. The officials did a great job of not blowing the play dead and let it continue on. And the smart heads up of the University of Memphis player, he saw that they just touched it, did not possess the ball. He went over immediately, scooped up the ball, possessed it, and then returned it about 70 or 80 yards for a touchdown. So it was an amazing heads-up play by a college player and just a wacky one, to be honest, in college football.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a heads-up play. As Patriots fans, we've always heard Bill Belichick and Patriots players talk about situation ball, knowing the rules, knowing, what's involved, what your responsibility is, do your job. And the returner for Memphis clearly knew. And, even I was like watching, didn't they just down it? Didn't they just put their hand on top of the football? But they didn't possess it, like you said. So, just the rules, it changes the game-changing. And just a heads-up play by the Memphis returner. And, just he knew what he was doing. He knew his role. And I think the returner also kind of saw the punting team, too. Everybody kind of slow up, not just the gunners who were the first players down there to try to make the tackle or make the play or save the ball. But the entire punt team just seemed to kind of slow up. Some of them started to walk off the field.
Yep.
So he just picked it up, had a lane down the right sideline, and just took it the distance. So, again, knowing the rules, knowing the situation, knowing, what opportunity was there for you was more important than even if he was fast or if he was a good returner or, if he had good hands or anything like that. And that's just a gutsy play and a headsy play by the returner there from Memphis.
Yeah, just a complete heads-up play by the return man. And we just talked about it last week about how we know at Alabama, their practices are intense. They're covering a lot. If you make a mistake, they're ripping into you and making sure you know your job going into the game. I honestly have to think it's the same way at the University of Memphis, because this kid was all over it, had the heads-up play and the knowledge to know, hey, that wasn't possessed. The ball's still live. I've got a chance to go make a big play, get my team to, back in the game or ahead in the game. And that's exactly what he did. And I've got to give his teammates some credit too. They knew what was up. They even threw a couple of blocks for him there down the stretch there that got him into the end zone once the opposing team realized that they had made a huge mistake. And it was really a mental letdown. And like we just said right there, all the player had to do was grab the ball and just hold on to it for 1 second. They would have blown the play dead. It would have been possession. All he did was just touch it for a mere second, and that is not considered possession in the game of football. The return man knew it. He was watching for it, pounced on the opportunity, ran the play back. One of the best plays I've seen, one of the most heads-up plays I've seen in college football over the last few years, and I enjoyed watching it. And honestly, I think this is great for the University of Memphis, a team that probably doesn't get much credit for their football team, more of a basketball school. So to have their football team get, some highlights here with this return and to get some coverage from the media, I think it's great for recruiting. And it's great for this player here. If I'm him, my draft stock has gone up, and I'm even telling people that right now, being like, I'm such a heads-up player, and then you saw what I can do when I get the ball. So I think this is great for the University of Memphis and definitely great for that heads-up player on their team.
Yeah, no question. And that player is going to have, if they do go to the draft and you're watching ESPN and they're showing highlights, that's going to be the first highlight. They're just going to show that one right away. No matter what that player does for the rest of his college career, if he's an NFL prospect, it's going to be the first highlight that everybody's going to go to. So good for that guy. That's pretty cool. We're going to move on to topic number 5 now. We're going to head over to the golf course. And, of course, coming up this week on Friday, actually, is the Ryder Cup. Right now, the Ryder Cup pressure that's on the U.S. team is immense. The U.S. has not won a Ryder Cup. 7 of the last 9 Ryder Cups have gone to the European team. A lot of pressure on this U.S. team. Of course, the Ryder Cup this year is at Whistling Straits. The U.S. team has a bunch of young guys on it. What do you think about the U.S. team and their being the favorite this week at the Ryder Cup?
I don't think I can consider them the favorite, considering what's happened over the last decade in the Ryder Cup, and specifically the the last two Ryder Cups where the Europeans have actually just taken us to the woodshed. And I mean, especially in singles, it just feels like they just dominated us on both Sundays in singles, the last two Ryder Cups. And I think obviously that's huge because, you know, through the first couple of days where you're playing maybe, you know, best ball or mixed ball, you can still, you know, give up some points. But come Sunday, when the single matches come, if you go on a run and win the majority of the single matches, you generally go on to win the Ryder Cup. And that's exactly what the Europeans have done over the last few years, is just dominate us in singles. So I can't really consider the United States a favorite until they come out and win. And I think this is considered a must win if I'm the United States Ryder Cup team after the history that we've had, and then being it on home turf as well. You obviously want to get the win and have a good showing. So I think it's a lot of pressure on a lot of these young golfers. And like you brought it up, where we don't have some of these key guys to lean on, obviously like a Tiger Woods or even like maybe, you know, a Phil Mickelson that, you know, might be there, but is, you know, obviously at the tail end of his, well, I can't even say the tail end of his career. In golf, you can play until you're like 100, right? But I'm just saying, you know, compared to some of these European golfers that have just been so hot in the Ryder Cup, it's just been, they're coming in with confidence. They're coming in with a ton of confidence, even though they're playing at Whistling Straits. It's a course that all of them are familiar with, playing on the PGA Tour. The Whistling Straits has also been a major on the PGA Tour, I believe, a few times over these last few years. So it's a course that everybody's familiar with, a course that I know I'm excited to watch and play, because watch and see them play, because it is such a challenging course, especially one where if you cannot be accurate off the tee and you end up in the rough, it will make you pay. And I think all these tough courses here in the majors over these last few years have been like that, where if you put it in the rough, they really make you pay. You're automatically pretty much going to lose a stroke or two on that hole. So it comes down to basically being accurate off the tee, then hitting a great approach shot, and then having the putting game to basically finish it all off. So a lot of pressure on this young United States team, but I'm looking for guys like Brooks Koepka to really step up and lead this team and put a mark on the game. I think that's the guy that I'm really going with this week, and I really want to see him do well this week. So I'm rooting for him. And then obviously, you know, his arch nemesis, Bryson DeChambeau, I think is another guy that we're going to have to see play really well to have the Ryder Cup come back to the United States. But just quickly, and a little side note with Brooks Koepka, just this week, because, you know, there's obviously been a lot of talk with the NFL and the new taunting rule, which I personally think is BS and hogwash. We could talk about that at a different subject. But Brooks Koepka came out and said that, he said flat out, I wish there was trash talk in golf. He said if there was trash talking allowed in golf, he would do it 24/7, nonstop. And I think, like I said, if we mic these guys up, it would just make golf that much more entertaining, and it would bring more eyes to golf and certainly more money. So I think that would be cool. But going back to the Ryder Cup, a lot of pressure on this young United States team, but I'm really looking forward to them maybe getting out of this hole that the United States has been in the Ryder Cup. So I'm clearly rooting for the home team, and I want to see them bring it home.
Yeah, I think this is the time for this group of Ryder Cup players for the U.S. to really step up and take the bull by the horns with the Ryder Cup, because like you said, in the past, Tiger's still been there, Phil Mickelson, and then some of the guys in their 30s and maybe late 30s on the PGA Tour were really the ones that were leading, and then it was kind of the younger guys, like Jordan Spieth of the world, that were sort of just considered the younger generation. They don't have a lot of Ryder Cup experience type of stuff. Now it's them. Now it's Spieth. You mentioned Brooks Koepka, Justin Thomas, Bryson DeChambeau, Colin Morikawa. Guys like that are the ones that need to take over the Ryder Cup for the U.S. this week. They need to be the ones that want to, you know, strangle, not literally, but obviously strangle, you know, the European players right now this week. Because the European team has Rory McIlroy, who's played in a ton of Ryder Cups, John Rahm. They're a little bit older than the younger U.S. guys, and they have a ton of major experience. They've won a couple of majors. They have Ryder Cup experience. You know, when you play over in Europe, you try not to hit it in the rough too, because they have courses like that, just like we do here, although theirs are more kind of link style, but they've played in a million different courses like this too. So, I think it's going to be important for those young guys who are now in their mid to late 20s. They're in the prime of their golfing careers, or actually early 30s is probably the prime of your career. Those guys need to be the ones that now need to make their mark in the Ryder Cup. They've all won majors. They've all won big tournaments. Now it's time to make a big-time impression at the Ryder Cup. That's sort of like one of the kind of notches in your belt as a professional golfer. Is how do you do in these team international plays, both the President's Cup and the Ryder Cup? So I think, for Thomas, for Spieth, Morikawa, Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, the time is now for these guys to put a stranglehold on the Ryder Cup and really take it home for the U.S. It's on U.S. soil. It's been too long since this is kind of tailor-made for these kind of guys. DeChambeau might hit it all over the yard, so he could be a problem. But because he tries to hit the ball like he's got a sledgehammer in his hands. But everybody else can hit a consistent, accurate drive. And then the short games of Thomas, Koepka, Spieth. I mean, when Spieth's cooking, he's hitting every single friggin' putt, especially if it's 10 feet or in. So, those guys have to be able to control the Ryder Cup this year. It's their time. If they don't win it this year, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a problem. And now the U.S. has to kind of figure out what are we going to do now, because all their top players are there and they're in their 20s and they should be winning this tournament this week. So it's going to be interesting.
I keep saying it's a must win. I think it's a must win for the United States team to get us off the shelf and back in the winning mode going forward for these guys, like you said, because it will carry over to even the next Ryder Cup, the confidence that they can gain here if they can win this one. The Ryder Cup is a big deal for you viewers out there that you might not know it and you might not think it is, but the Ryder Cup is a big deal for the whole European team and for the United States team and for the whole world of golf. So we're really looking to see the Ryder Cup come back to the United States soil. These young guns are going to have to step up, like I said, especially in singles play on Sunday. That is going to be huge. But I'm really looking forward to seeing Brooks Koepka step up and two other guys that you brought up, Collin Morikawa, who I'm quickly becoming a huge fan of. I would love to see him have a great Ryder Cup and step up and maybe go undefeated in the Ryder Cup, which is huge. That puts out a big impression when you can do that. We've seen other young golfers in the past go undefeated through their weekend in the Ryder Cup, and that has a good showing for them throughout their season as a player because they just get into a great rhythm. And then another guy that you brought up is Jordan Spieth. I would love to see Jordan Spieth have a great Ryder Cup. And I guess what Jordan Spieth is an easy guy to root for, honestly. He's an easy guy to like, an easy guy to root for, and definitely one of my favorite players on the United States team.
Yeah, no question. Always has been an easy guy to root for. And again, this is, it's an individual sport, but this is kind of the one time a year where there's a team aspect to it, which I think is why a lot of people who play golf love the Ryder Cup when it happens every couple of years. So that's another aspect that everybody wants to check out. Before we move on to our next topic, Brandon, we talk a lot of F1, and we had a voicemail left for the show. I believe it's an international voicemail, so we're going to let our producer, Ben Kudo, let us play back that voicemail, and then we'll see what we can do with it.
Hi, I heard that I follow you. I live in the Netherlands. I follow your comments on F1, and I heard that Max Verstappen will be able to serve his 3 grid penalties and also the penalty for taking on a new engine at one go. Is that allowed in F1? Success with your program. Bye.
Oh, I love it. A voicemail from the Netherlands. Thank you so much for calling in and leaving a voicemail. Again, folks, you can call that number. You don't have to call the show live. We'd love it if you did. But if you don't, you can leave a voicemail. We got an awesome voicemail just now from the Netherlands. F1 stuff, Brennan, you're the expert. I'm going to let you have this one for stopping the grid penalty. Have at it.
Well, first off, I want to thank our caller from the Netherlands for calling in and leaving that great voicemail and for watching us every week for our great F1 content from here from the States. So thank you very much for calling in. And honestly, it was a great question. When I heard the voicemail, I was super excited because I said, oh, man, we've got a really knowledgeable F1 fan here with a great question that I think a lot of people have been asking going into the Sochi Grand Prix. So to answer the caller's question, The answer is yes. The answer is yes. It is legal, and you could potentially see that happen from Max Verstappen this week at the Sochi Grand Prix or the Russian Grand Prix, whatever you'd like to call it. So obviously we know from the crash incident with Lewis Hamilton at Monza that Max Verstappen got himself a 3-place grid penalty. We were arguing that we thought it should have been at least 5-place grid penalty, but the FIA stewards settled on it being a 3-place penalty that he's got to go back in the grid. So now Red Bull has the option to say, okay, do we want to take our engine penalty at this point? And it has been known that Red Bull was going to have to take a 4th power unit at some point in time in the season. And it's looking like this could be that time where if they take the power unit, they go immediately to the back of the grid with the power unit penalty, which would also wipe out the 3-place grid penalty at the same time. So he would be serving it. But the rumor has it is that Red Bull is going to wait and see and make the decision once the weekend starts at Sochi, and potentially might even make the decision after qualifying and seeing where Max Verstappen can qualify, then decide if they want to go ahead and just serve the 3-place grid penalty, or if they want to go ahead and also take the engine penalty and also go to the back of the grid. But to answer the caller's question, I believe, yes, it is completely legal and is definitely an option that we might see happen this weekend at the Sochi Grand Prix.
Brandon, really quick, where do you think, a finish from Verstappen during qualifying is sort of the over-under line? Like, at this, he qualifies to here, we're going to take the penalty. But if he makes it this far, he qualifies this quickly, we're gonna wait for the penalty.
I honestly think if he qualifies in podium position, which we know is 1, 2, or 3, if he qualifies in podium position, I think that they might think, okay, if we only take a small grid penalty, we're only going to be in P6, and we're still right there at the start. And with the long rundown into turn 1 at Sochi, I mean, this is one of the longest rundowns to turn 1s in Formula One at any track on the calendar. It honestly feels like it's forever. I mean, it is just a drag strip down to turn 1 at Sochi. So if he can get in the great slipstream, even coming out of P6, going down into turn 1, he could easily find himself fighting for P3 or P4 and be right back into the Grand Prix, obviously. So I think that's one of those things. If he qualifies through 1 or 3, I think they might just say, hey, let's take the penalty. But I think if he qualifies any further back, I think they'll say, hey, let's pop in a new engine. Let's go to the back of the grid. Let's wipe out this penalty. And then we will have all the horsepower we need on an amazing track to be able to fight to the front. And to be honest, Max Verstappen has the capability to be able to do it. He is a great driver. And to be honest, he's done it at this track in the past. I believe it was in 2018. Red Bull, it could have been 2017, but I believe it was 2018. Red Bull also took an engine penalty there. He went to the back of the grid. He powered himself right back to the front and had himself a great race and ended up, I believe, on the podium. So it's definitely one of those things right now where there's a lot of options for Red Bull going into the weekend, and taking a grid penalty is one, but obviously taking the engine penalty on top is another option that I think all their strategists are going to be basically, thumbing through to decide, is that going to be the right decision after qualifying, or it might even be before qualifying that they decide that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting too. And like, how much further are they going to kick the can down the road on that engine penalty? Because there's certainly some strategy involved in that. We have Rusman Reyes, who is one of our avid followers and is always in the live chat. And he's right in there now. He actually posted something about the Patriots. So I'm going to quote what his live chat statement is here, and then we'll talk about it a little bit before we move on to topic number 6. It says, enjoying the show, and since he thought the Pats got worse, in my opinion, he says, and Belichick have to make the playoff because the Pats fans are starting to get annoyed, is basically what he's saying. He thought the Pats got worse this week against the Jets. Belichick's got to do something because the Patriots fans are getting annoyed. I'll go first a little bit, Brandon, then you can fire off. As Patriots fans, we expect Super Bowls, but we just lost the greatest Super Bowl winning quarterback in the history of the NFL. So what we have to, I think, as Patriots fans have to understand is that this particular season is going to be a buildup. The Pats are a work in progress. Not only do you have a rookie quarterback back there who is probably more ready than any rookie quarterback in a while. I mean, Mac Jones seems like he's just ready to go, but he still is not going to be chucking the ball around the yard because they still want to win games. On top of that, you have a ton of new personnel, both in the skills position part of it on offense, but also the defense has a ton of new guys. Matt Judon, Devin Godshaw, Kyle Van Noy, who was gone last year, is back, and he actually missed the Jets game. And the other part of the Patriots that I think is struggling right now is their run defense has not been good the first 2 seasons, so they got to clean that up. They're still waiting for Stephon Gilmore, who's on IR, to hopefully come back after week 6. So the Patriots just have a lot of work to do, and that's because they have so many new guys. It takes time to get everybody on the same page, to get everybody in the same rhythm. One play in particular that was talked about on Greg Bedard's podcast from the Boston Sports Journal is that there was a play where Mac Jones threw it quickly to James White in the flat, and he got just nailed right away. And Mac Jones threw it a little bit high, but looking back at the film, Bedard was even talking about how normally a Patriots tight end in that play would go about 4 yards off the line of scrimmage and also sort of just run this route to shield the linebacker away from the running back in the flat. Whereas what Hunter Henry did on that particular play was he went a little too far field, 6 or 7 yards, and the linebacker went under him and was right there to make the play with James White. So what he was saying was basically the timing, the feel for these plays is just a little bit off right now because it's week 2. Hunter Henry barely played during the preseason. Jonnu Smith barely played during the preseason. So, we talked about earlier about how that Mac Jones missed Hunter Henry in the end zone earlier in the game. Mac Jones is now probably going to look for him after watching that film and say, I got to look for Hunter a little bit more on a play like that. So the timing, the new guys, rookie quarterback, you've now on your 3rd quarterback in 3 years as opposed to having the same quarterback for, 19 years. So I think that's something that we have to consider. They just win some games, get better every week. There's going to be weeks where Mac Jones is going to be terrible. He's a rookie. But the Pats are just going to keep building and building and building and hopefully play well at the end of the season.
Ruseman Reese, man, we love you on this show. You're always commenting. You're here weekly. I mean, you're here just as much as us. I mean, honestly, I love it. Yeah, so I love it. Ruseman Reese, thanks for the comments about the Patriots. Honestly, I see both sides. I see Ruseman's point, and I see yours as well. So let's go with Ruseman's point. I got to agree with him. I'm getting annoyed. I'm getting annoyed with this Patriots team. I want to see us win. I want to see us at least minimum get back to the playoffs. And I think that's the key. You know what I mean? As Patriots fans, like you said, we expect championships, but at least let's expect to be fighting for a championship. That's the main goal every single year. So I want to see this team get back to the playoffs. And then I think a lot of things why some fans are annoyed is because they expected to have a veteran quarterback. They expected to have Cam Newton here, a veteran quarterback. Like I said, the team's looking very mediocre, still like Cam Newton was on the squad, except Mac Jones is leading it. So I can see why some fans would be kind of annoyed that we're not getting enough yet. But on the other hand, I do see your point, obviously, where we got the rookie quarterback. We've got to be, patient per se, give him a little bit more time to develop and come along. And I do think, like I said, I even said it on the show earlier, from week 1 to week 2, he showed me a lot of progression and did get better. I do think the team looked a little better, still obviously very pedestrian. I think the defense did their job, obviously had a lot of gifts given to them by Zach Wilson. But I do think, this is a Patriots team. They still got a lot of work to do. And if they want to look to make the playoffs, they've still got a lot of messages that they need to send to the NFL, especially the AFC East. But hey, let's move on to topic number 6 tonight. We just had an amazing voicemail from the Netherlands for F1. We really appreciate that. Thank you for leaving that voicemail from the caller from the Netherlands. But hey, if you're new to this show here, give us a subscribe, give us a like. We are on a mission to hit 1,000 subs here at Comeback Sports, and we need you to hit that subscribe button. So come on, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and keep tuning in here weekly for all this great content we deliver at Comeback Sports. But yeah, let's jump into this F1 content this week. We only have one F1 topic on the show this week. We're just dabbling a little bit in, but don't worry. After the Sochi Grand Prix, I'm sure we will have plenty to talk about. But this week and even last week, Pierre Gasly has given us plenty to talk about, talking about the possible return to that Red Bull seat, or possibly moving on to another team in F1 and just completely separating himself from that Red Bull camp. But there's been a lot of rumors. There's been a lot of talk over these past few weeks. And then even Pierre Gasly has spoken up himself a few times over these past few weeks. So, Pat, what do you think? First off, the past, and then, the present, and then the future for Pierre Gasly with Red Bull F1.
Yeah, so we've mentioned this before. Gasly, when he was kind of brought up to the big boy team with Red Bull, struggled. He struggled a little bit. I remember, watching on Drive to Survive and Horner trying to kind of, he at first kind of put the baby gloves on and was trying to help him out. And then towards the end, they were like, we got to make another move. And now with the success of Gasly from last season, this season, he's been doing so well. You now wonder, did Red Bull make a mistake? Did they not give him enough time, to really kind of, get used to that seat? I know there's not a lot of time to waste in F1. It's kind of like, what have you done for me lately? But he's been so good, especially considering the car that he's driving in. If he was driving the Red Bull car, would that make a difference? The other thing is Sergio Perez, is their second driver right now. You have a very established driver in that second seat. Now, he hasn't had the greatest of years that I think everybody expected him to, but I believe he's still in 5th place in the standings. So it's not like he's, falling off the map either. So, I think the question is, and I believe Perez is only on a 1-year deal. So I think it's done at the end of this year, from what I understand. So the question, I think, first is, what's Red Bull going to do? Is Red Bull going to re-sign Perez? Are they going to bring him back? Because that's what they have to decide first. Perez is 31, so he's not old, but he's, 6 or 7 years older than Gasly. So, they have to decide, do we want another young driver next to Verstappen, or do we want more of a seasoned vet? Then after that, if they re-sign Perez, a 2-year deal, then Gasly's definitely going to look elsewhere, because he doesn't want to wait around for that seat to open up. He's going to want to go to another car, another team, because he knows that, he already knows now with his little bit of time in that Red Bull seat, that time is fleeting in F1. So he knows he's not going to be around forever. He's going to want to get into one of those upper echelon cars, and he's not going to wait another 2 or 3 years. So to me, once Red Bull makes a decision on Perez, affect Gasly. And maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe Gasly behind the scenes is talking to Horner, and they're trying to figure this out to get him back in there. I think that's going to be a very interesting part of silly season with F1, as always.
Yeah, I think this is a major part of it, and it's a big deal. And obviously, if I'm Christian Horner, I've got the ball in my court, and I've got a ton of options for my driver lineup in 2023 for people to slot next to Max Verstappen. And if I'm Christian Horner, I'm giggling and laughing happy, because like I said, I've got tons of options and I can pick anybody I want. And I've got a ton of good drivers, with obviously Sergio Perez, Pierre Gasly, and now Alex Albon even coming back into the mix. So he's got a ton of options of who he can slot in with Max Verstappen going into the future. But I've got to say that right now, that seat number 2 is the hardest seat to fill in Formula One. It comes with the most pressure, driving alongside Max Verstappen and being Max Verstappen's teammate. Obviously, he's one of the best drivers on the grid, but people even say it year after year, Red Bull is tailoring their car to drive for Max Verstappen. So as the driver number 2, you're pretty much having to drive Max Verstappen's setup every week and having to figure that out and learn your way. And I'm not saying that they're not taking in feedback from the second driver. They clearly are, but they're more leaning on their driver number 1, their hopes of winning the Formula One Drivers' Championship, and having the youngest champion ever is Max Verstappen. Everybody knows that. So I'm telling you, being Max Verstappen's teammate is one of the hardest things to do in Formula One. A lot of people want to try to claim being Lewis Hamilton's teammate is worse, but no, heck no. Being Max Verstappen's teammate comes with so much more pressure, having to match him in the car, match the times he's putting in, match the finishes he's putting in. But then also, like I said, having to learn how to drive his car, his setup. every single week. And we've seen it in the past with obviously Gasly struggling at the beginning, not being able to get it right. And like you said, they really didn't give him much time. Quickly move on to Alex Albon. Alex Albon pretty much has the exact same showing, if not worse, than Pierre Gasly. And so then they're like, well, okay, we're left holding our hand here. Who do we go to next? Sergio Perez, luckily for them, came on the free agent board and they signed Sergio Perez. But now here we are. And it's been, Sergio Perez has kind of been hit or miss. One weekend, he's having an amazing weekend where he's pretty much passing everybody, getting the great finishing position. Then the next weekend, he's making a huge mistake, having to go possibly to the back of the grid and having to fight his way back through. And at times where Max Verstappen's qualifying in the top 3, Sergio Perez is qualifying outside of the top 6. And the big part here, getting out-qualified by Pierre Gasly in a car that is arguably slower and is not as good. So it's just really one of those things where even Pierre Gasly, and Pierre, I want to tip my hat to you and having the courage to be able to speak up this week and say, hey, look at what Sergio Perez is doing this year. Look at the results he's put in. Look at the results I've put in an inferior car. I belong back in that seat. I deserve another chance with the big team. And I think he's right. I do think he's right, man. This year, P4 has been his position. That has been his home. He has been qualifying P4. He has been finishing P4. His worst finishing position has been like P6 this year. He has always been up there fighting. Honestly, in Monza, he was up there in the sprint race fighting. If he didn't make that, there was such a small mistake there where he lost his wing off the back of the McLaren. If he hadn't done that and had to go to the back of the grid at Monza, I think we would have seen Pierre Gasly fight for another win at Monza and definitely finish, like I said, maybe P4 again, maybe even P5, P4, maybe even get on the podium again with the way that Grand Prix played out with obviously Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton getting knocked out, with Max Verstappen crashing Lewis Hamilton out, as I say. But yeah, I got to say, Pierre Gasly, I think has done a great job this year. I do think he deserves a chance back in Red Bull. And I think it's one of those things where if I'm Pierre Gasly and if Christian Horner decides to re-sign Sergio Perez even for 1 year, or if he decides to go with Alex Albon or a different route, that I say I'm ripping up my Red Bull contract immediately, looking to go to another team. And if I'm him, I'm potentially looking to go to maybe Aston Martin in the future with, obviously Sebastian Vettel getting a little older. I love Sebastian Vettel, but I think he's like Lewis Hamilton. I think maybe you got 3 or 4 years left in Formula One, and then he's probably going to retire and walk away, kind of like Kimi Räikkönen's deciding to retire. So I think Aston Martin could be a great team for Pierre Gasly to look in that will keep him to the front. And with their brand new factory that they're building, they clearly want to put their right foot forward to get themselves to the front of the grid. So I think that could be a good choice. Another great choice, obviously, he's a French driver, would be to go to the French team, Alpine, and then they would have an all-French lineup with Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. And honestly, that was a rumored lineup in the past to bring those two in together. And it obviously a French team, an all-French lineup, to be able to fight the all-British lineup that Mercedes is going to be fielding with George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. So I think if I'm Pierre Gasly, if they do not promote me back to the Red Bull seat next year, well, guess what? I'm looking elsewhere, and I'll be happy to fight you, Christian Horner, going forward on the grid.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point, too, about you talked about some of the other teams who might have some aging drivers. If you are in the second Red Bull seat, as long as Verstappen is there, you're playing second fiddle. So you're never going to be the number one guy. And Verstappen's younger than Gasly, right? I mean, I think he's even a year younger than Gasly.
About a year, 1 year, yeah.
So, you're never going to be in that number one seat unless Verstappen, leaves, which wouldn't be a shocker either. I mean, anything with Verstappen is possible. But he is their guy. They have, you're not going to be ahead of him. So you might want to look at other options if you want to eventually be in the top spot on your team. And, you're never going to do that with Red Bull. It's going to have to be somebody else. Like you said, with an aging driver, you might want to buddy up with them. Even, this wouldn't happen. But let's say if Gasly signed with Mercedes, at least like Lewis Hamilton is probably another 2 years, then he's done. And then maybe it's your turn. Verstappen's the same age, like we said, a year younger than Gasly. So he's never going to be in that spot. So that's what Gasly has to kind of decide, even though it's awesome to drive in a Red Bull car, obviously. And then real quick, Rosamond Reese once again kind of chiming in and saying, he thinks Gasly's a better driver than Sergio Perez, but it's, whoever gets in that second car with Max struggles because, like you mentioned, Brandon, they have to get used to his car. So it's almost like you wonder, you got to kind of grade on a curve with that second driver in their first year with that car. And Perez, even though he hasn't been great, has probably been better than anybody else in that second car with Max Verstappen. So you have to kind of consider that too if you're Red Bull too, I think. Picking it up now with topic number 7, we're going to switch over to baseball. Brandon, do you want to add a little bit more to that F1 topic?
Well, Rosamond Reese is the man. I got to say that again. He keeps commenting there. Appreciate you for commenting in, Rosamond Reese. I've got to agree with him, that I think Gasly is the better driver than Perez and has the better upside being the young driver, and we can look to him longer. But I do agree with what you just said, where I think Sergio Perez has probably played second fiddle best to Max Verstappen than compared to how Albon did or Gasly did. So that brings in a tough question of, do you want to have him come back and do the same thing for Max Verstappen, or do you want to bring Gasly back? So I think it's a tough decision, but I think it's one that Christian Horner is going to have to decide here soon, because Pierre Gasly is also going to have plenty of options as well, because he has had such great form here and he is such a great driver.
Yeah, it's very interesting. A lot of moving parts, as always, to F1. Once again, we're going to move on to topic number 7 now. We're going to switch over to the baseball diamond and Shohei shut down. Shohei Ohtani, it sounds like they're going to be shutting him down as a pitcher for the rest of the season. I think Shohei's still going to bat and maybe play the field. Might just be a DH for the rest of the year, too. The Angels are completely out of contention. They're not going to make the wild card. They're certainly not going to win the division. So, Brandon, a couple things here. One, as a fan, I'm sure this, you just hate to see this, a guy with this unique of a season being shut down on the most unique side of it, which is his pitching aspect. And then, do you think this is going to hurt his MVP chances, even though right now he's the front runner?
Flat out, heck no. And if they vote anybody else the MVP, then they'll look like idiots right now. Even with this guy having to be shut down early because of an injury, he's still the MVP of Major League Baseball. He's done things that we haven't seen in over 100 years in the game. He's done them better than Babe Ruth even did. So I got to say, this guy is the Major League MVP, and just lock it in no matter what else he does this season here. They could just shut him down for good. I still think you need to drop this trophy off at Shohei's front door when the season ends. So I say no to that. I definitely still think he's the MVP of Major League Baseball, no matter what. In my opinion, he would definitely still have my vote. But hey, man, I got to say, we went with Shohei shutdown, but I like the being called, oh no, Ohtani. Like, oh no, Ohtani. Oh no, we got to shut Ohtani down. And so I think that's really one of the things. It's kind of a disappointment, I think, for us fans to see Ohtani get shut down. But I think like we said, we both said it clearly a precautionary thing when you've got the best player in baseball and you're not playing for any postseason baseball. Like, let's protect our asset. Let's protect Shohei from himself even, right? As a great player, sometimes you want to just go hard no matter what's on the line. So I think this is great from the Angels. I think this is a smart decision to shut down the best player in baseball and your number one asset. He is the franchise right now, and that's crazy to say when you've got a guy like Mike Trout on your roster as well. But I clearly think this guy is the franchise right now. I think this is a precautionary shutdown to keep him healthy and to keep him fresh going into next season, so we can see him do this all over again next season and potentially win back-to-back MVPs. And I know people are saying, whoa, Coach Perry, you're kind of getting ahead of yourself there. But I think this guy's been so impressive that it would not shock me at all for him to just, get a nice break off and then to come back next year and do it all over again and look just as good, maybe even better. But I think you're right. I think this is the right call, and I think it's a smart call for a team that's out of postseason contention. And I think, like you said, I think the even smarter call would be, hey, let's shut him down in the field as well, and let's just make him a DH only and let that bat ring out home runs for the rest of the season, and so we can at least still enjoy watching him hit some dingers.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, because he mentioned that he had either a sore arm or sore shoulder. I can't remember which one was which, and that's why they're going to shut him down. It's not because he's got actually a severe injury. It's just that time of the year, and like we mentioned, they're not playing for any playoff spot or in playoff contention. The only way he doesn't win MVP is if Vlad Guerrero Jr. tears the cover off the ball the last couple of weeks of the season. Right now Toronto is fighting the Yankees for that second wild card spot. If they surpass the Yankees and get to that wild card spot, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is the biggest reason they do that, then maybe just maybe that he'll get the MVP. I don't agree with it, but I can see the case being made, because I am a big fan of players who have awesome years and carry their team into the playoffs. I think that's huge. Unfortunately, that's out of Shohei's hands. It's not his fault that Anaheim, can't find the playoffs if it was, living next door to him. But, I think they also hasn't been healthy this year. So maybe next year with Shohei, a healthy Mike Trout, maybe they go after a pitcher in the offseason and try to kind of retool this team to contend again in the AL West. Then I think that would be the kind of the plan for the Angels. They're in Los Angeles. They have money. They can make this happen. So that's probably the plan. You don't want him to have a nagging, lingering injury going into next spring training. So I think this is the right move. I hope he still bats. I think it's still important to have him finish off the season to some extent. They'll probably sit him for a couple of games, kind of sprinkled throughout the rest of the season. But I think he'll still get some at-bats and still play a little bit. So totally understand what they're doing. I still hope he wins the MVP. I think that would be huge. It's just such a unique and unbelievable season from this guy who's going to be an MVP contender for years to come.
Yeah, and to your point, I got to agree with you. I think you got to give a player that can carry his team into the postseason a little bit more credit. Rightfully so. They've earned that. And so I definitely agree with that point. And I also agree. I think if they keep Shohei batting at least, and they keep him as a DH, I think that proves to his point to say, hey, he's still out there. He's still, hitting home runs. He's still getting on base. This is your Major League Baseball MVP, and he still deserves it. He's still out there. He's still playing. We've only just shut him down from pitching and maybe taken him out of the field. And that's not his choice. It's our choice as a franchise. So I think that's one of those things. If he can still continue to bat and put up some numbers and hit some dingers, that he will definitely still lock in that MVP vote. And I think it's something that not only that me and you want, but I think it's all the Major League Baseball fans want this. I think the world wants to see this. And so I think it'll be big for baseball if they make sure, and I'm not saying they rig the vote. I don't think you have to. I think this guy's done enough already to make it happen. So I think it's just one of those things where even if he just stays steady right now, that you've got to lock him in as a Major League Baseball MVP. And not only is it going to give him what he rightfully deserves and earned, but I think it's going to give your game, Major League Baseball, a lot of respect and credit and get eyes back on the game and bring money back to it. We all know that's what they need to grow and keep Major League Baseball alive going into the future. This is the guy to do it. So you got to reward him for what he's done this year and give him the MVP. But let's move on to some more baseball. And that's topic number 8 in the hometown Boston Red Sox getting back on the straight and narrow and winning some games to get themselves back in the wild card position and leading the wild card position with only, a little stretch down here before we get into playoff baseball. The Sox are starting to come back online.
Yeah, it was looking grim for a little bit with the Red Sox. They had the COVID outbreak. They had that game where Chris Sale was starting. It was on Labor Day, and they blew a lead. And it was because some of the fielding wasn't great because you had guys that they brought up, a week or two before because Kike Hernandez was out, Xander Bogaerts was out, Brandon Arroyo's been out. So their fielding was terrible in that game. They lost with Sale on the mound, I think a 7-2 lead on Labor Day. And I even thought to myself that this is it. The season's over. Like, they're not going to make the wild card. They're not in good shape right now as far as the pitching staff, this COVID outbreak. Somebody else is going to get it. And then, typical Red Sox fan, just negative. And then all of a sudden, they go on this tear. They've won 6 straight. They're winning 10-2 right now against the Mets in the 5th inning with Sale on the mound, coincidentally. And, they have a 2-game lead in the wild card. They win tonight. They're going to at least hang on to that 2-game lead. And things are looking pretty good. They got a series coming up with the Yankees. And that's going to be huge for them. If they win 2 out of 3 there, they're in great shape. And I don't see them losing the wild card if they win 2 out of 3 against the Yankees. And it's just unbelievable how quickly they kind of straightened everything back out despite that COVID scare. That really could have kind of taken them down. They had a pretty good trip out to Seattle, which was big because that was a team that was kind of fighting them for a wild card spot for a little bit. But now this Red Sox team, they had a good picking up Jose Iglesias, who's a really good fielder. Unfortunately, he's not, because of when they picked him up, he's not going to be able to play on the postseason team, but he's going to help them down the stretch of the regular season. Guys like Xander Bogaerts started to pick it back up since he returned from the COVID list. Having Kike Hernandez back in center field is big. He hit a home run last night. So you have all these guys who, they weren't necessarily missing superstars, but guys that come in, get hits in the clutch, they were missing. So to have those guys back, Schwarber is looking like a good deadline deal for the Red Sox, even though he hasn't played first base like everybody thought he would. They've kind of gotten to that point where you feel good about them again, especially with the lead they have in the Wild Card. So you got to be happy with the Red Sox right now, despite worrying about them just about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I've been on the record before saying I think the season is too long. They play too many games, and I think this proves it where, they go on these up and down runs, and for a couple of weeks there, they looked so bad you thought they weren't even going to make the playoffs. Then these last couple of weeks, they go on another super run, and they're right back in leading in playoff contention. So, I think that's even more to my point, that they just play too many games. The season needs to be shortened down and have the games be a little bit more important. I think it should be like in the distance of the NBA season, around 82 games instead. And I know that's cutting it in half, but I'm telling you, I think all the games would be a lot more important at that point. And you're going to see so many of these down runs where baseball teams are like, whatever, we'll come back in the next couple of weeks and we'll put ourselves back in position. And it's like, for fans, I think we'd see a lot more of an exciting game week in and week out and day out if it was shortened down and the games meant a little bit more. But I've got to give credit to the Red Sox and getting back in shape here and getting themselves back in position. And namely, I've got to give credit to Alex Cora. I think Alex Cora has done a great job with this team and, making all the right decisions here, especially down the stretch. And I've got to say, even that COVID scare had me shook, where I was like, man, they just losing players left and right. And are they going to keep losing games and be out of contention? But he stayed calm in that situation, kept his team calm, kept everybody organized, got guys back slowly, got them together, kept his clubhouse, on point per se. And then, man, they just started winning games again. And I got to say, a big fan of, Alex Verdugo and Kike Hernandez. I think they've had great seasons. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do in the playoffs. But obviously, too, I'm rooting for the Blue Jays here down the stretch to keep the dreaded Yankees out of the playoffs as well. I think that would be a win no matter what. If the Red Sox go to make the playoffs and the Yankees have to stay at home, that is obviously one win that we want to see every single year. So I'm rooting for the Blue Jays here down the stretch just as much as I'm rooting for the Red Sox. But I think the Red Sox have done a great job putting themselves back in contention.
Yeah, and the last part of the schedule has certainly helped the Red Sox too. They played Baltimore over the weekend. They have the 2 games with the Mets, the series of the Yankees that could be huge. And they have 3 games to end the season with Baltimore, and then 3 games with the Nationals, who sold off a bunch of players at the trade deadline. So all the AL East teams, they play the same schedule. It's just the games lie in different places. And now the Red Sox went through the tougher part of the schedule. Now they're going to finish off the season with sort of the easier part of the schedule, Baltimore and the Nats, to finish it up. So they're in prime position to win the wild card, or at least one of the wild card spots in the AL. So certainly Red Sox fans have a lot to be thankful for right now. We're going to move on to topic number 9, and that is Simmons sitting out. Ben Simmons just came out yesterday, or at least a report came out yesterday, saying that Ben Simmons is done with the 76ers. He's not going to report to training camp, and he's even said he is never going to put that Sixers uniform on again. Brandon, what do you think of this Ben Simmons situation? We knew he wasn't happy. We didn't think he was the right fit with the Sixers, but now Simmons is playing his own hand here, just like a lot of NBA players have over the last couple of seasons. What do you think is going on with Ben Simmons?
Buy him a plane ticket back to Australia, because I honestly don't care if he sits out or not. I think most NBA fans will say that too. This guy's not that exciting to watch. And I would think even most NBA fans would say that he's one of the most overrated NBA players over the last decade. And I think he's proven that with his game. The guy can't develop a jump shot to save his life. Getting paid millions and millions of dollars. Get yourself in the gym, stay in the gym until you develop a jump shot. We've seen this from other NBA players where, let's even bring up maybe a guy that, struggles from the line. He'll take himself in there and he'll shoot nonstop and get himself better. Like, have some pride in your craft, Ben Simmons. I don't think he has. I think he's a very arrogant player that thinks, I don't need to get any better. I'm already in the NBA. I'm getting paid millions of dollars. Don't need to improve my game. Well, I think clearly you do, and your team does, because in the playoffs there, you couldn't hit a jump shot. They couldn't go to you down the stretch. You were unreliable. You turned the ball over a lot. There were questions after the deciding game being like, is this the guy that can lead your team to a championship? And the coach immediately said, I don't know. I don't know if it is. Clearly, since then, Doc Rivers has backtracked like he was Michael Jackson walking the moonwalk, saying, hey, I didn't say that. I was saying I didn't know in that situation because we had just lost and I didn't want to answer the question. No, Doc, you flat out said, I don't know if he's the guy that we can get it done with. And Ben Simmons obviously heard that too and was upset about it. But I think it's true, man. I don't think this is a guy that, at least in the point guard position, you can win a title with. And here's my assessment of Ben Simmons. He's a power forward in a small forward's body, okay? He's got the game of a power forward where he can only attack the hoop, play down low, back you down, right? Rip some rebounds, right? He's pretty good at doing that. He's not that great at distributing the ball. I don't think he's that great at handling the ball, okay? He can't shoot. So, like I said, he's a power forward in a small forward's body trying to play point guard. Like that. Do you hear what I just said? That sounds so absurd. That's the type of game that Ben Simmons has right now. It's disgusting. He's got to decide what type of player he wants to be going forward. He's got to improve as a professional basketball player. So like I said, if I'm the 76ers, I get it while they're in such a tizzy here and they're in such a rush, because guess what? They're trying to trade him. They're trying to trade him. And if he doesn't come back, that lowers their trade value and they lose leverage to be able to trade him. So they're trying to say everything to get him back. And I guess what? If I'm the 76ers and if I can't trade him and he decides to sit out, well, then my team's even worse, because now I have one less player in my rotation and now everything's on Joel Embiid. So I totally get why the 76ers are trying to walk this back. But if I'm them, and me personally, I don't give a crap if Ben Simmons sits out. I don't even think he's that good of a player. I think he's overrated. And I think they're going to have a hard time trying to find a trade partner to get this guy.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is that Simmons is hurting his trade value right now. Like, what? Stop talking. Like, I'm not saying, like, don't talk. But, like, what? Like, just let this play out. Behind the scenes, Sixers, you want to leave. I don't think they want him there anyway. So let them work out a deal with somebody. But the Sixers are now losing leverage because everybody knows that Simmons doesn't want to be there. Teams are going to know when a guy's on the trading block with another team. They just know that because people know this, that Daryl Morey's trying to trade Ben Simmons because these phone calls. But what they didn't know before, Simmons gets all flustered about it is that Simmons is really upset about being a 76er. Now they know that, so now they don't have to offer as much to the Sixers. That hurts the Sixers' motivation to trade Ben Simmons. And whatever anybody thinks of Simmons's talent or his fit or his game or whatever, they invested a number one pick in him. So the Sixers aren't just going to give him up for a bag of balls. They're just not. So, if Simmons laid off of criticizing the organization, what they could have done, they probably would have had better leverage. They might have been able to trade him for Dame Lillard. I mean, that could have been a possible trade option, which would have been good for Simmons because then he can go play out in Portland, where the fans there like the Trailblazers, but nobody else in the country pays attention to them. And Dame Dollars, drilling game winners. But, if he goes out to Portland, Dame Lillard comes to the Sixers, Lillard's would be the perfect complement to Embiid. I hate that as a Celtics fan. And then, Simmons can go out there. He can be the point guard. He can rebound. He can play defense, what they need in Portland. He can kick it out to CJ McCollum, who's a three-point shooter, and then they can kind of put some shooters around him and go from there. He needs to be in a place where Simmons is afraid to go to the basket, get fouled, and go to the free throw line. That's his biggest problem. And we saw it with Giannis this year. Giannis isn't afraid. Giannis will go to the free throw line. He airballed a couple free throws. He bricked a couple free throws. But he's not going to be totally embarrassed by it. He just moves on, and then the next game he shoots 90%. And that's why Giannis is one of the best players in the NBA. That's why the Bucs just won the title. Ben Simmons has all the talent in the world, but he's afraid to miss shots. He's afraid to miss free throws. He's afraid to look kind of ridiculous out on the floor a little bit, and that's why he hasn't gotten any better. He's afraid to take shots late in the game. So go to a team where nobody's going to pay attention to you for a year or two and just kind of figure it out. And that could be Portland. It's crazy to say it now, but the Spurs are not the same organization anymore. Maybe if he goes to the Spurs and kind of, retools everything. He's got Greg Popovich as a coach. They've got, shot doctors down there. They've got a great coaching staff down there. Maybe that's an organization he goes to. He's not going to go to like the Warriors. Everybody thinks the Warriors are going to trade for him. He's going to be under the microscope if he goes to the Warriors because everybody's going to be watching him every night. We'll see. But he's hurting his trade value by saying this stuff and with his agent saying this stuff, more recently. And now the Sixers are really caught between a rock and a hard place with this.
I mean, I've clearly said that if I'm any NBA team, I don't want this guy on my roster anyway. I'll trade nothing for him. But let's just say an NBA team does want him on their team. And like you said, San Antonio, maybe a DeMar Rosen, DeRozan for Simmons. Maybe that would be a good trade for San Antonio. I just think you're right. He's too afraid. And when you're afraid to shoot, that means you got to go in the off season and dedicate yourself to getting better and improving your game. So when game one comes back, you have all the confidence in the world to shoot the shot and that you need to when you're open and to go to the line and hit free throws. So he's got to improve his game in the off season. And I just don't think he's dedicated himself enough to doing that. And it's clearly hurting his game. It's hurting their trade value. But yeah, I mean, you brought up the Golden State Warriors as a potential trading spot. The owner just got fined $50,000 for making comments about a potential trade with Ben Simmons. So that's how, much it's been brought up. But if I'm Golden State, man, like I just said it, if I'm any NBA team, I don't want this guy on my roster. If I'm Golden State especially, I do not want to trade anybody for him because guess what? They're probably going to want the likes of like Klay Thompson or somebody really good in return. Why would you do that? I would rather have Klay Thompson get healthy, come back, and play alongside Draymond Green and Steph Curry, and you've still got a great team that can make a run in the West without a Ben Simmons. I'll tell you what, if you trade Klay Thompson, one of the best three-point shooters in the game, for one of the worst shooters in the game, that's idiotic to me. But I don't know. I just think, like you said, the trade value is going down right now because he's speaking up. Every team knows he wants out, and they want to trade him. They're trying to backtrack and say that they don't want to trade him. They want him back. He's saying he might sit out. So right now it's just an absolute debacle. And one that we're going to have to continue going forward because I think over the next few weeks, it's definitely one that's going to get shaken up here. But let's move on to our final topic of the night, and that's the Clippers' new house. The Clippers' new stadium in L.A. The Los Angeles Clippers have come out this week to say that they're building a brand new stadium independent of the Los Angeles Lakers. And to me, that was the biggest news, is that they were finally saying, hey, we don't want to share the Staples Center and share all the credit and all the fans with the Lakers anymore. We want to have our own home stadium that showcases our team. And guess what? Hey, we're going to build it and we got the money to do it. So we're going to do it right now. And the way that they showed it, some of these drawings and the computer renderings looked amazing. Yeah.
This looks sick. I mean, you knew Steve Ballmer was not going to spare any expense if he was going to build his own arena. I think this makes sense. It's certainly going to help the Clippers. Certainly helps that Kawhi Leonard re-sign for another year. But, if you're the Clippers, you're playing second fiddle to the Lakers anyway in LA. The Clippers used to play in San Diego. So to me, the Clippers should say, okay, the Lakers are the Hollywood team. They're the LA, Hollywood, Orange County folks, you want to be the Lakers fans, go be Lakers fans there. Folks from San Diego, you're more laid back. You're not as wacky as the Hollywood crowd is. Come watch the Clippers. Come to this other stadium, which is going to be state of the art. Instead of going to the Staples Center, you come here, you hang out at our place. It's going to be newer. There's going to be a fresh look. You know, we're going to be good with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and they're going to bring other guys in. They're going to be a competitive team too. And come to our arena. That's what the Clippers are trying to do. They're trying to bring fans to a different arena to get away from the Lakers, stop playing second fiddle to them. They're never going to be the number one team in LA per se, but they should sort of be their own team in Southern California. You know, and I think that's what they're trying to do right now. And this should be the way to do it, is have their own stadium. And then fans can kind of, you know, look at it as their stadium too. You know, if you're a Clippers fan and you keep going to the Staples Center, you know, they put the Clippers floor down, but it's still the Staples Center. It's still the Lakers arena. So this makes total sense. Then Ballmer is going to be able to compete for concerts and other things like that too in the arena. And if, you know, the Staples Center is booked, you can go to the Clippers Center. I'm not even sure what they're going to call it yet. But I think this makes total sense. It's only going to help the basketball team. It's going to bring more fans to be Clippers fans rather than just sort of LA basketball fans.
They're going to call it the Intuit Dome. So Intuit is their number one sponsor, I guess, in building it, has already bought the rights to the stadium. And if producer Ben, pull up that spot where it's got the, you know, the helicopter shot looking down at the Intuit Dome. But that's what it's there. It is right there. It's pretty tight, man. It just looks awesome, like state of the art, looks amazing, like fits well into the city. I think it's going to be amazing. But I think you brought up a good point. Like they're sick of being in the shadow of the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, you go in there and you look up into the rafters as a Clippers fan, and guess what you see? You see 17 world championships for the Los Angeles Lakers. You see 0 for the Los Angeles Clippers. Are there any numbers retired up in there for the Clippers? I doubt it. Maybe so. 1 or 2. I doubt it. So it's like you look up there. Obviously, you got Kobe's number 8. You got Kobe's number 24. It's purple and gold everywhere. I mean, I get it. You know, they tried to make it 2 different stadiums. When the Lakers play there, they dim the lights for Hollywood. And then when the Clippers play there, they put on the lights because, you know, it's a totally different show. Like, no, it's not. It's the same stadium, man. Same stadium. You're just putting down a different court. You know what I mean? So I think this is a great idea for the Clippers to step out of the shadow of the Los Angeles Lakers. Now their fans can go there and look up to empty rafters because they've just got nothing up there. But at least they don't have to be reminded of the success that the Los Angeles Lakers keep having, and they've got none. So I think this is great. Great for the franchise, great for the fans. Like you said, it gives a lot more options as a local venue for concerts, for conventions, for everything to be able to go here. So I think the Intuit Dome is going to be one of the most high-tech stadiums in the NBA. So I think this is clearly, I think they'll be selling out tickets and selling out the stadium early here and bringing in the fans. But producer Ben, go to that inside shot too, if you could for me, please, because the screen around the top is amazing. And it looks like SoFi Stadium for the Los Angeles Rams. The Los Angeles Rams, they have the board in SoFi Stadium that goes completely around. And I think they just stole that idea from another LA team. But I think this will look awesome inside over a basketball court. So I'm looking forward to seeing this thing when it's finally built and in its final form. But I undoubtedly think this is an amazing decision by the Los Angeles Clippers to build their own stadium and have their own house.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, too, they're probably going to implement a lot more tech into the stadium, too, where there's more every fan's on their phone when they're at the stadium. So why not, take advantage of that and implement some new features where you can get involved in what's going on with the stadium, just from your phone, so that you're watching the game, you're doing something on your phone with the arena. Ballmer's, got rich off of a big tech company. So this is obviously in his wheelhouse. That's what they're gonna do here. And just to have that awesome banner monitor there that you were just talking about is really cool. You don't got banners, well, you have this unbelievable flat screen banner that goes around the stadium, which is pretty sweet. That's all the banner you need. So
we'll hide those banners. We'll hide them. You won't see them.
Yeah, exactly. So this looks awesome. I'm sure they're pumped to do this, and yeah, definitely an attraction too for people going. It's hard to get Lakers seats, so maybe when you go visit LA, go to a Clippers game. They're going to be good too, and it's going to be a state-of-the-art stadium. So just one more thing to check out in LA. That's going to do it for Comeback Sports this week, folks. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate our caller from the Netherlands who left a voicemail for us, Rusman Reese, who's been a great fan of this show. Again, Rusman, thank you so much for following us live here tonight. He jumped in the chat, folks. You can jump in the live chat too. If you watch us live on YouTube, if you're a subscriber, you can jump right in there just like Rusman has. He asked us some questions, gave us some of his opinions, and we commented on them as well. It's almost like having a third seat here in the Comeback Sports show. We have a fourth seat because we had a voicemail too. So you can be part of the show if you call in or if you want to jump in the live chat. Folks, make sure you subscribe to Comeback Sports on YouTube and also follow us on Twitter down here. Those are our Twitter handles. Make sure you check us out there. And again, just make sure you subscribe on YouTube to Comeback Sports because it's going to help us out. Brandon, what do you got to add before we sign off?
Looking for a great race at the Sochi Grand Prix and the Russian Grand Prix, and whether we get the question of, is Max Verstappen going to take that engine penalty? And hey, what is Mercedes going to do, and what's the strategy for them going forward, because they need a win. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this Russian Grand Prix coming this weekend.
Yeah, that Verstappen penalty is going to be a subject of conversation the entire weekend, which is going to be awesome for F1 fans from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's going to be great. It's going to be action-packed this weekend. That and the Ryder Cup. So a lot going on, international sports over the weekend. Folks, thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time on Comeback Sports. Have a good week, everybody.